Welcome! We are live again. This is Rise of AI Virtual Chat episode 16. And you might be live here too, so as usual, I welcome you to introduce yourself in the chat. My name is Fabian Westerheide. I'm an entrepreneur and investor with a passion for artificial intelligence. This is also a podcast, so you might listen this as a podcast or you watch the replay on YouTube. So say hello. Also, I have created some polls, so if you're live there, you can answer the polls. Today, I would like to ask you, what are the reasons why B2B integration for AI is lacking behind? You know, why it's not going that fast as we would like to have it. In preparation for this, I thought okay, why are the reasons, where are we standing? And I remember that in 2014, when I went full AI, deep learning came out and it started to emerge. We were all bullish. We were all excited. Singularity is close. Ray Kurzweil, everyone says hey, the AIs are coming now. And I would say in 2016 to 2017, everything was about AI policy, billions of new funding, funds, a lot of startups, hype, journalists, everyone talked about AI. But 2019, it shifted. It's not that it's like an AI winter. It's just we were sobering up. We were realizing that expectations and what we actually can achieve with it doesn't match. We thought it would save the world and it didn't do it yet. However, that's not the reason. The reason is not because AI is not good enough or the researchers are not good enough. It's the opposite. It's integration is lacking behind. We don't have enough companies actually using AI and therefore we have not enough products out there. So this is the topic we are speaking today about. Last time we spoke with Professor Kersting about research and they are doing good. And we spoke about how to improve policies with 2 members of the parliament from Germany and with 1 member of the parliament in Europe. But today we speak about B2B integration in the industrial space. And my guest there is Dr. Ulli Waltinger. And he is formally, you would say, the head of machine learning or machine intelligence research at Siemens Corporate Technology, but he's also the founder of the Siemens AI Lab. So he started in the machine learning area and now he's also head of the AI. So he's kind of in charge of everything about AI at Siemens. And Siemens is a huge industrial company, globally active. Just for his background, he grew up in Regensburg and I think he wanted to leave. So after his Abitur, he went to London, he went to Australia, and then he ended up in Bielefeld. Since I'm from the area too, I will ask him how he can end up there and how he was able to stay there for a while, because he did his master's there plus his PhD. And his PhD was already in AI about social semantic and machine learning. So today we will talk about him, AI integration in the industry, in business. We talk about frameworks, lessons learned. I say, welcome, Olli.
Boom! Fabian, thanks very much. Super stoked. What an introduction, right? Almost awesome, right? Everything I need actually now, and I can close down now. I can retire, right? It's such a great introduction of you. Thanks for having having me on your show.
Right? Yes, wonderful. So I'm from Ostwestfalen, or some even say Ostwestfalen-Lippe. It's like a Gallisches Dorf out there somewhere in Germany. There's nothing out of work. There's a lot of industry, countryside, and nothing else. If you grow up there, it's boring, which I enjoyed. It's nature, etc. You studied there. You went to Bielefeld. Tell us a little bit. Bielefeld people haven't realized with AI. So why? What speaks for Bielefeld?
No, Bielefeld are pretty cool actually. So I ended also up. I didn't know about Bielefeld. Actually my 2 kids are born there, right? So I'm heavily still, even though now in Bavaria, now in Munich, right? I'm heavily related to the Bielefeld area and Hinterland AI, I guess, right? Which you also want to call it, right? Has a high affiliation with AI technology, Leibniz Prize, neural networks, right? Cognitive interaction, right? So these kinds of university and academia, right, in Bielefeld are quite significant. And this reflects also to the time where I was there, doing my master's, doing my PhD, having my postdoc there, in terms of having the excellence cluster, what it's called, right? The corporate, the government-wide program. And one of these excellence clusters, SciTech, Center of Excellence of Cognitive Interaction, was associated also in Bielefeld. So it gave me and my family actually a perfect environment to grow, to grow up literally on my kids' side, but also to grow for me as a young researcher. Having the research fundamentals, the fundings, obviously, the toys for boys and girls, right?
It's always about
In there, but it's also engaging with the scientific community. Because if you have such a competence center, the competence center for robotics, Asimo, you may remember, right? Under the first Asimo robotics center is also Bielefeld, located actually on the university, and this marvelous interdisciplinary setup of cognitive and computer science was a great journey, and it's still feel very much related.
And I think this is important for most universities. We don't only look for computer science, AI. We look for cognitive science, biology, philosophy. All these cross fields have to come together and network. And I think university is good for this. Then let's jump. You went to Siemens, and you told me yesterday your career, but we'd speak about you today.
It is a similar, right? So I ended up, I don't know, 2012, I guess, right? With a finish on my postdoc, and I'm looking for, I spoke with a small staff in speaking at the junior professorship in Frankfurt, and then directing doubts, in Munich, and doing then landing there. I was always passionate about, application, and this is also what I missed the most when you do research. You explore on artificial data sets, you do machine learning or semantics, or you're trying to bring both worlds together, which I did in my PhD. And then you're striving for I want to apply that actually, and so for me the best company and the best path is applying and going to a corporate research where you have data, compute resources, the use cases, the challenges, but still engaging with the scientific community. And that's why, if you look in the map of Europe, there are not that many corporates back in the days, right, which had this kind of fundament. And hey, such a global organization as I'm working now for, has marvelous use cases, opportunities.
Did Siemens by 2012 already have AI as a term in its research department, or did you have to create it?
No, so Siemens has in corporate research quite a long history actually in AI. So obviously from the naming, we call it neural networks. Okay. We call it not expert systems, right? We call it knowledge decision systems, right? Okay. We call it machine learning, but then setting up the umbrella of hype, right? I would say I survived two hypes. The first was then the big data hype, and the second one is now actually it's still on hippish, but we are now maneuvering from the hype on AI, like the umbrella of smart intelligent systems, adaptive systems, towards to shipping it to product, right? Shipping it into practice, and this is what we see here. And this journey, right, guiding a large corporation which has a high footprint in actually physical systems, right? Controllers, turbines, energy production, grids and stuff like that. And guiding that a bit in pieces along the journey. What's the impact of digitalization? Big word, right? What's the impact of data-driven decisions? Big word. What's the impact of AI in the global organization? Pushing that, how it's an AI-first company is, I guess a couple of folks would say is the task.
So AI it's a buzzword. It's a while. It means it's older than computer science to build human-like machines. I mean, we're all machines in a certain way.
There you go. Nice T-shirt, by the way.
I know that Siemens and others use machine learning and machines and intelligence for decades. I mean, it was always there, but it wasn't classified as AI. So you said there were like two hypes, two waves. What changed in the last 8 years inside of Siemens and the relevance of AI in terms of resources, data? Like, did it grow exponential, or was it always the same, just with a different focus?
Corporate life always exponential, right? We demand exponential on every case, right? Scalability, profits, no, just kidding. So what changed? So in on the one side, you have transactions are processed and use cases. And that means obviously if you looking very, very back, then you see, the first neural networks deployed 20 years ago, right? Steel industry, right? Optimizing the product production, right? When I moved to Siemens Corp, we deployed the first question answering system for energy systems. So, asking natural language questions was at the same time as IBM Watson, right? Was pretty hippish, right? And the first task I was asked, move to Princeton and define with a great team an architecture and implement a QA system that is able to answer questions randomly about the fleet, right? Building on one side, building what is now called, I guess, a knowledge graph on, a digital twin representation of where are our turbines, what status have with services. On the other side, allowing them to natural language converse and have natural language interfaces towards these. So from the application side, there has been a plethora of that. Though, obviously, what changed is that with the we're always software-centric, purely software-centric. It means like product software-centric, providing simulation software, providing services towards real products. With the emergence of digitalization and the digitization of processes, suddenly data arise, and suddenly new opportunity arise, and suddenly what is now called an ecosystem changed. The way how we do business changes, and the corporation adopted on that.
So did it?
And
because everyone complains we are old, but did it? You show me insights into Siemens I did not expect.
So in first place, if we are stretching over, obviously we have a huge program on big data. I think every corporate had huge, data warehouses, head of systems, and tons of consultants fostering. So like in a very early touch base, how do we leverage the value of data? And we call it data to business, right? How we take with data and make it to business, even though it was still back in the big data hype. So the mindset was already, okay, we need to incentivize and we need to be transparent. Where is our data? In what kind of warehouse, EMS, MES systems is it hidden, right? Can we somehow integrate it? And the first discussions went on, how do we manage these kinds of aspects? Second aspect is, how do we generate, insights out of that? That was the big data. And the insights in the corporate world were pretty much driven by dashboards, to be honest, right?
By what?
So, with dashboards, Tableau, Spotfire, dashboards.
Dashboards. Oh yeah, sorry, dashboards. Yes.
Sorry. I'm famous for not opening my mouth while I'm talking. Right? No, so dashboards. That means we enter a phase where data-driven decisions by distribution of some kind of data, right, in a visual manner, and that means it leads to incentivizing, training, skilling on, how do we gain this descriptive aspects based on our data. And then AI picked up, and that means we shifted towards, we don't only want to have descriptive statistics, data-informed decisions, but we also want to predictive, prescriptive. So that means we want to have, more adaptive systems, more process optimization, right, and gaining more efficiency, right? And this is always what you target. And guess what? One of the toolboxes that are pretty much cool for that is machine learning systems, right? So and this is the hype. So identifying then on the management board that this is key in digitalization. If we maneuver towards, somehow the digital service and the digital the area, also on a large corporation, means we need to set programs, right? And programs have been set from top down. And you gave us a very kind introduction of, right, head of AI and stuff like that. Siemens organized from top down. Willem Busch actually initiated a program which is called Company Core Technologies. That means they define a set of technologies which identifies like these are keys, and these shall be programs. Obviously, corporates run programs, right? One of these programs is called Analytics and AI, right? Which incorporates, 200, 230 pure researchers, plus a plethora of business colleagues working on AI and organizing themselves as AI. So it's also a systematic program.
So this is very corporate style, and we'll ask you later how this can be adapted for Mittelstand, for smaller companies who don't have this structure. But so I understand, first it was all about data. Sure, you need data for everything else. And then it was about dashboards who provide you insights, but they were descriptive. And when we turned with machine learning to prediction or even automation, this changed too, and machine learning got more important. So this is a trend, and Siemens was playing along with this trend because there's a lot of software out there. I mean, a lot of factories use machines by Siemens, which run within operating systems, which is from Siemens too. Did it change on the management level? It sounded a little bit like before it was not. You told me yesterday it's almost CEO level today, this topic. So did AI increase?
It is, yeah, sure. It is C level, right? It has C level attention, and with C level attention, it's a program, right? Which is it's led by Michael May and corporate, CCT, all the abbreviation in the corporate world, like a program. You're signing the portfolios, and with the portfolios, you assign projects, and the typical a bit of also hierarchical thing, how you organize and how you let's say control and how you actually communicate stuff. The second one is launching a training. And a corporate-wide training, and I mean like top-down training. It's called ABB, Applying Digitalization to Our Business. Initially, I know it's crazy, but content is right. Content is right, right? So it means, the notion is pretty short, right? Siemens C-level says, like, if AI is and data analytics and cybersecurity and cloud are those essential concepts, we want that everybody in the organizations understands and speaks the same language and looks behind 2 or 3 steps behind the buzzword. Not everybody needs to be a neural network, right? Engineer, right? Or data scientist, but they need to understand the profound impact of these technologies. And this is what we have done, and my team and me also, rolled out worldwide. We have a lot of manager, believe me, in there. What is hands-on actually? What is machine learning? How do you build now computer vision? What is the CNN doing? What is an activation function? And what is backpropagation, right?
And okay, so that makes fully sense to educate. I wish all politicians would take the same course too, so they're on the same level. Did you only educate other scientists or developers, or did you educate managers too?
No, it's a top 100
management.
And top management.
So
we have a lot of top management.
So you designed a workshop training program for manager and Siemens to bring them all on the same level.
Yes, where it is it's called, I guess they call the A team, right? We have a bunch of, 15 people, designing individual classes, on my side, on the AI side, on the other side, cybersecurity, on the other one, connectivity, designed hands-on classes. On the one side, this is important. Understanding inspiration is important. Mm-hmm. Understanding technology is important. But also, third part is, how do you ship that in products? How do you ship that and make the converge? Because managers do like, playing toys, understanding concepts, and they're really smart. They really catch up very easily. But obviously, they need to see the opportunity. And this is the challenge also. How do you make the bridge over to, make it in the product?
So I summary. It's top level. So the CEO or the board of directors said AI is a core technology. That's first step for everyone out there. Your CEO needs to believe in it. Then you educate your management level, the first, let's say 10%, about the core technology, how to use it and why. And then you give them tools at their hand to execute and to make money with this. And now we come to this, this part is how. How did you teach those people to build products, to make money and to execute on it?
So that's a tough one, isn't it? Right? So
it's not solved. That's why we talk today, and you will share this with the world.
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually, you don't say, you have to do these and these and these, right? Because we're talking about large organization, and you talk about leadership and about mindset. Mm-hmm. Accepting that we live in a world of scale. We live in a world of continuous uncertainty, and the continuous uncertainty needs to be somehow tamed or at least embraced in a positive manner. And This is a lot about leadership. You can already obviously nail it down. So like, okay, top use cases are predictive maintenance for UKs, then comes supply chain, then autonomous manufacturing, then resource optimization. So you can nail down, the opportunities with the markets into use case clusters. But this doesn't help on the job profile. You need to give them blueprint and best practice on their hand. How do you leverage and identify opportunities in your business together with your customer, right? And these we do have a tool for that, right? It's called design thinking, right? About value proposition, leveraging about pains and gains, about customer journeys, about personas, stepping in the foot of a customer, identifying what kind of pains do they have, because it is not like now we have this AI, this garbage in, gold out thing. But these machine learning systems works effectively if you define the objective function very effective, and if you define this objective function, identify the function, and it solves them, right? I always say it's like start from the deployed object and work backwards. Then you can identify these cases which may scale in your business.
Okay, so I have the understanding and I get a process to identify opportunities together with my customers and then to build products. First there, how do they do it? Do they all have their own AI team or do they book the central AI team? Second, do they build their own knowledge stack or do they consult you? And second is, did you give them like a PDF and this is the secret sauce for Siemens to be AI ready, or did this happen a lot of iterations? Are you like internal consultants now?
Yeah, it's a good one, right? You need to have somehow the sizzling, right? We are, a central function basically, and therefore our aim is to push innovation to our colleagues and with our colleagues to the external customer world, right? So yes, we have somehow a central function which does that as well. What also C-level did, and so like, okay, if data analytics and AI is that of importance, then we need to put the teams and the lab structures onto the regions and into the sections where the customers are and where the verticals are. So where the actual business is. So they called application centers, right? So put an application center for mobility, AI and analytics and mobility close to the mobility, right? So in Allach in the States, right? Energy management, Sevilla, Manchester, water, right? Customer service, Erlangen, right? Airport, Dubai, mobility and city, Singapore, right? So putting competences, teams, and know-how in those regions, those aspects, where the business and where the customer is, so we can work together with the customers. Because the significant changes normally as a corporate, you would go back, you would design a product and say like, ta-da, here it is.
Yes.
All the features you have or you don't have, right?
Yes.
And this is not the work we currently is in, right? We need to embrace this uncertainty, like actually we develop features and maybe also the product along with the product journey together with the customer. And this is a significant mindset. I know that's not AI geeky, right? But this is how you develop well, right?
That's very good, because this first worlds with every technology, and I think this is a very needed infrastructure in a corporation to implement the fast impact of new technologies very fast with customers. I think this is a structural thing which is needed. I'm with the comments here. Yeah, Michael says that the strategy is often lacking, and it's an issue for operational leaders in the UK. So. You have the strategy, you have the education, then you build the competence centers out there. That's super good. Let's take one example for now. Please something industrial, because I like everything which is manufacturing. How did it work? Like one piece where we can understand how the process works and where you brought in AI into the value chain.
So there's a plethora, right? So there's a plethora. So if you start from industry, you talk to define, okay, in industry is pretty much still on what's called Wertschöpfungstiefe, so depth of value, the depth of value. Okay. So we'll hopefully talk about the breadth of value in a second, but let's talk for the first place of the depth of value. So depth of value in AI and data analytics, let's say, or machine learning analytics, is about gaining more throughput, gaining more efficiency, right? Optimizing yeah, optimizing towards efficiency. This is what the main aim is. And then you look at pains, what is currently in the production process, say Amberg, one of the factories, what kind of, pains do we have? And then you identify, okay, we want to increase with machine learning the throughput of the production of the PCB boards, right? This is, moving out, and we need some manually checking the PCB board, and so like, oh yeah, here right out, here rework, here out, here rework. So can we somehow give this process, right? What of this process is already digitized? What is not digitized? Can we leverage the power of machine learning? In this case, visual recognition. Can we power to inject and step in here, augment this decision process by means of machine learning. So then capturing obviously a lot of data, right? And not just raw, hey, I want everything data, but very targeted towards the objective function. We want to, analyze the quality of certain parts in that based on the quality criteria, and then deploy it, observe it, improve it, right? And this is the step, right?
But
you need to nail it down to.
That sounds easy for us too, because it's like on the board. We have one comment here that mostly it never gets over the proof of concept or MVP. So how do you make sure that a small MVP is really deployed at the end?
That's the there's a nice nice stats actually corporates Gartner and stuff like that, right? 80% of things end up at the POC level. I think that's in some cases you may not change the number of 80% will end up at the POC level, to be honest, right? Because certain pieces needs to be tested and agreed then this is not doable or that this doesn't provide the value we wanted to expect it, right? The natural reflex prior was obviously a manager says, show me the business case. If the business case is calculated, it will do it, right? So, but for many pieces in the corporation, you can't calculate precisely the business case because it changes, and that makes it a bit flexible. One aspect I always see is if you don't have C-level attention on your use case, your use case will never see a light. So it can be the marvelous case as well, but if no C-level attention is there, right? If your manager doesn't support that, right? Ain't nothing. Second one is people tend to not include the operational from the beginning on. If somebody needs to be productivized, these people who productivize the thing needs to be from the very beginning on there, right? Third one, have the right competences in there. And the right competences means also customer involved there. If you're not developing and putting the customers from the beginning in the process of there, you ain't gonna end up at a product the customer would love and like, right? So including that. And it means bridging the world of management stakeholder, customer journey in there, data science expertise, no question about it, but operational engineers. And these are the four pillars. If you combine them from the beginning on there, then you have, from my perspective, higher chances to get it on the road as you would explore it just like, you know what, I have a working student who tried it out, but it never worked, right? You know what I mean? In most of the cases, I see working students are driving our digital transformation, to be honest.
Oh, I agree. Right? I told you, our intern set up the whole OBS system here. I mean, he was fixing something no one was able to fix. I mean, the smartest people is often the youngest and the freshest because they have less politics in their mind, and the manager needs to protect them and leverage it. You said 80% of your cases were ended at a POC or MVP level, which I think is fine because this is like a startup. It's a test. If it doesn't work, you don't scale. But 20% means you rolled out. Do you know how many thousands or dozens of AI projects you have at Siemens? Like, do we speak about dozens or about thousands, which are in the global corporation?
Yeah, so obviously, since it's a program, right? What does a program do? It somehow, communicates and tries to aggregate. Aggregating of a company of 380,000 people, dude, that's crazy important. You can somehow estimate, and obviously we do hundreds of POCs and software development and projects. Some more data analytics, some more AI, some deep down in reinforcement learning, some deep down in computer vision. Not everything gets reported, right? Who wants to be just on a reporting structure, right? You can imagine that this number is quite high, to be honest, right? I have a good overview, and I want to call out now a precise number because somebody nails me down, and that made a circumstance like what? But believe me, it's quite a mass what is being tested, right? And to give you just maybe a sort of round reel, right? We're talking about global services, right? Global services, global shared services, right? Speech recognition, translation, NLP extracting from documents, from travel costs, from you name it. I did OCRs on travel cost reimbursement, right? Biggest AI use case, I guess, for most corporates out there, right? We're talking about HR. We're talking about how do we interface with employee conversation AI. Carl is such a virtual assistant, right? Which interfaces with the colleagues. Semantic search. How do we access the right information? Can I ask question? Oh, I need to converge now, combining conversation. I have a question. Here's my leaf ladder. Please process it again. So RPAs, robotic process automation, right? We're talking about Siemens financials, so financial industry, risk assessment, banking assessment, right? We're talking about industry, obviously, predictive maintenance, production, visual recognition, visual identification. We're talking about energy, control optimization, reinforcement learning deployed in various turbines, right? And not that many people do that, and not many corporates do that, right? We're talking about additive manufacturing, observing while printing, a camera touch to that to see at the quality inspection to reflect on when the printer is actually ready, that the quality is fair enough.
That sounds like Siemens is an AI company no one knows outside of Siemens and your lab, maybe.
Yeah, might be right. I think yeah. So I think this is also one approach. You ask me, hey, dude, you have this plethora of talks. You're just talking, right? No, actually, we're doing. I work. I'm delighted to work with awesome, great team, right? My core team is like 25 people, and we have the lab as an incubator for exactly facilitating these kinds of journeys, right? And yet we think that this AI narratives are really important because I think, from my perspective, my personal perspective, Europe has just an image problem in terms of, if you draw the line of, hey, US giants and Asian giants, we need to make transparent, hey, where we have an impact and how we work together with customers, right?
So
and we can continue, right? I haven't touched mobility, right? Tracking vehicles, right? Doing autonomous driving, right? Cybersecurity, we observe, right? And also in our lab, right? We observe every URL. Cybersecurity is such an important, and obviously cybersecurity comes from outside with AI and deep learning, so we want to tackle it with inside with deep learning. Health and years, biggest pattern detection area, right? So there's quite a lot actually there.
Since Siemens is so huge, 380,000 people, you said there are many different units, right? And therefore, I mean, it's like thousands of startups in one, or thousands or dozens of companies in one. But I summary. So you have the C-level attention, you have educated the management, you have given tools, frameworks, AA, you call the competence centers or application centers for all the subunits so they can execute. Then you do MVPs, you measure them, then you roll out them with the teams, with the client, with the C-management support. Now you have a lot of learnings. And we talked about this. After this, we came to a point like the feedback loop, which is keyword, explainability, trustworthy AI. I mean, you're working with data. You said it's like used in recruiting. It's used with finances. What are your learnings? Best practice like integration, what you learn and what's key, so everyone here in the talk can take out. But second, learnings, what occurred. How do I do trustworthy AI? Because this was not a topic 5 years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't. So in the first place, I think you initially you said what's the difference between, I guess, shipping machine learning in the consumer space and shipping machine learning in the business space, especially maybe industry space, right? Let's start with data, right? So data is somehow entirely different, right? In the B2B area, because in the consumer area, the data is produced and deployed within the web. We call it web data, right? Instagrams, sales transactions, right? So they stay in the web area, right? And challenge on B2B side is, the data is actually produced outside the web in the digital area, right? And needs to converge to
So
the
in the
web
car,
area.
in the turbine, in the nuclear power plant, someone purchased a product by Siemens and they produce the data.
Exactly. And that means they own the data, right? We ain't gonna touch that, right? So that means you have these two words. And I would say, even though we're talking highly about, AI is augmenting our task and augmenting our lives, if you look in the B2B world, it's actually caved, to be honest. We are approaching the augmentation more and more. It's pervasive, and we are on the roadmap of pervasive, but actually we're caving it. And this means, right, we have robotics which are closed down, adaptive systems, right, but they are clearly separated, to be honest, still clearly separated between human interaction and machine interaction.
So let me jump
similar
in.
as take Waymo, take Waymo, right, geofencing, right, more or less geofencing, right, exactly. And it means we are not, in the last 3 years, we're not dominating by augmenting yet, right? But actually separating, so like this is where robotics and adaptive systems and autonomous systems run, and this is where the human acts. And we are now converging to merging collaborative robotics, converging, digitalizing process, and also looking at a process, see what's digitized and what's not digitized, and then placing the weakest signal. This is how you gain efficiency, right? And that demands trust. And this trust is the second differentiator, because people were used to make this task, to optimize, to take the decision because of a massive domain know-how and experience, that now this machine should stop because otherwise we break something, right? And now suddenly data-driven decisions, not only as informed decisions, agnostic, but also actually actuations, like actions are taken. That demands a high, different level of trust.
So just for
and
my
this trust
understanding,
is
before the machine, a human said stop the machine because it was separated, human and machine. And now we come to collaborative machines, where the machine can make its own stop decision. Where you give more. I would call, you open the world model for the machine. It understands human exists and considers also the human in its own decision process.
Exactly, and this demands trust. All cloud providers do have this trust currently, and they stay in the web world, even though exactly what the Facebook Reels, the Instagrams, the Twitters, or the Googles do with their data, but you still have a high layer of trust because you stay in the action of your, it's not shutting down or closing your door. It's not opening up your oven. It's not shutting down your kitchen, right? Yet, proactively. But we're talking in industry, we're talking about, real money value and real physical harm, right?
Yes.
And for that, that's a different trust leap you have to take, right? And this is also so.
But
third one.
But let me keep this for a second. For everyone out there, this trust issue is very, very important and interesting, because I have a portfolio company with Asgard, and it's called Microps Industries, and they build software for collaborative robots. So at the end, they have taught robots to learn, to adapt to the environment, to optimize on their own, to learn they're humans and interact with them. And it's a lot of trust, and they have to build, by the way, the trust first with the purchasing department and with the client, let's say ABB, for example, to use their software. It's interesting. So you have to tell them trust the software in a certain extent.
Yeah, the fourth thing is, so one leading use case, predictive maintenance. What is predictive maintenance doing? Predictive maintenance is like, hey, I want to identify a failure, something corrupt, in your process or production process before it happens. Guess what? These not happening a billion trillion times. Right? So if you collect data, you end up with very rare evidences, right? When a tube may get broken, a plastic may be broken, process needs to be fixed, right? That means we're not talking about trillion of cats in the web, but we're talking about rare events in a large set of sensory information. That makes it really tough, right? And it ends up at unfancy sounding anomaly detection, outlier detection, and these kinds of cases, right? And the fifth pillar is then, you need to deploy it in the product itself again. And this is also something, which I guess is pretty much, crazy. First of all, collection of data. How do we connect the assets? Many of the partners and customers are still not connected. They're still in their phase of cloud first, right? They start with cloud first, and even though we're shifting now to the edge paradigm, that means that currently I would say is 80% of data, crunched in the cloud, 20% on edge, and we shift in the next years 80% on edge, 20% in cloud, right?
So you
And
are a huge pusher of this edge technology, which at the end means you don't
yeah,
have it
I'm
on
sure.
your. It's the mixture between cloud and on-premise server. It's at the end
If,
accessible
if
cloud,
you
but close to the machine to reduce latency, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you need to change and adapt to real-time processes, you want to be close to the edge, and you want to use the capabilities close to the edge. Sometimes data should not even leave the
Yeah.
factory just for certain conditions. You want to use still obviously cloud capabilities because you want to have asset monitoring, asset indexing, condition monitoring overall. So you want to train in the cloud and deploy in the edge, right? And
We
these
get
kinds of paradigm will be really
Michael.
interesting.
Michael in the chat is here commenting hacking machines is serious issue. So we speak about trust, but then we can speak about cyber too. So let's see, how do you defend your systems, especially if an edge computer is now a gateway to control a whole machine process.
Yes. Yeah, that will be it is and will continue a huge challenge, right? And yes, obviously machine learning does a great value add as well, right? It starts from all kind of interaction. The biggest weakness, I guess, is not necessarily maybe the physical interaction of injecting, but rather the man in the middle, putting the USB stick, the hacked USB stick in a computer, right? And opening up, clicking on the map, clicking on the links with this, fusion of cloud accessibility and network accessibility. These are, heavily fragile, to be honest, as well, right?
So
There are processes,
humans need
right?
the
Pen tests
weakness.
and client slides. Yeah, I would, from my perspective, and that means it's also clear, and this is also for management top attention, which said like, alone we will not make it. There is no chance by ourselves to have a holistic security, and there will be no 100% security. I'm sure. Right?
Okay.
There will be, because it's always there. And this is what I know, it's a bit again corporate things, right? But it's called charter of trust. I mean, in this kinds of things, organizing different corporates together and it's like, hey, let's work together and embrace and also make transparent. This is very important. Again, make transparent. If you're hacked, if you have certain incidents, report it, right? Commit that you report it, so we know what's on, right? And this is not a usual process for corporates, isn't it, right? But this is being transparent, working together and accepting there is no 100% security, and working together to make sure together we are stronger.
I think this is a good message. First, make it transparent, admit mistakes, and second, penetration test. You call it pen test, but when I did a security offering 2 years ago, I invested a lot into Bielefeld company who did like 2 days full penetration testing. Trying to get into the cloud, databases, WordPress system, etc. It's expensive, but it is critical and important. So we have roughly 15 minutes left. I would talk about two more things. How to build trust and how a machine can provide trust to humans, which is explainability. And second, how Siemens is cooperating or integrating, opening up to the ecosystem, because you said we can't do it alone. So let's talk about trustworthy AI. Technical, how do you build trust?
Okay, so there's a nice saying, trust is not only about technology, but it's also about interaction, right? There are certain pieces in the paradigm and the formula is, I trust my wife, I have no clue what she's currently doing about. So transparency may be, something not always, explainability, I would call it, right? You're visualizing a neuron, maybe not the right decision. Though, obviously, if you compare again B2B and B2C, so it's like when we talk about the B2B area, we're talking mostly, and also the research, applied research, it's about human tasks. It's about machine translation, it's about speech recognition, it's about the ranking of products, stuff like that. We don't expect 100%.
No.
I'm
Google
okay,
search is
right?
not perfect. Google search is not
Yeah,
perfect, but
exactly.
we
We
learned
don't expect it. When
this.
that's exactly, I'm fully okay, and the people are fully okay with not 100%.
Right.
If you are in a system area, right? Robotics operation in
But
the
you want
healthcare.
100%.
Yeah, but it's hard, right? But it's you want to have it robust,
Yes, but the car,
and you
robust. The car has to drive by 100%. I don't expect it, well, this is the best I can do based on the data today, but tomorrow it's rainy, I can't drive
yeah,
anymore.
yeah, but that's what it is. You want to have it robust in first place, and you
Robust.
want to have
Right.
at least explainable and somehow transparent. So it says like, now please take over the steering. I'm not confident anymore, right? Has search ever ended up on your side? Dude, I actually don't know. I just give you a thousand of results. I don't have a clue whether this is right. No, never, right? Because you don't expect it, because you
Right.
accept failure. And this is different in systematic. And that means it's robust. So you need a measure for robustness. Second one, it needs to be explainable. So you need some kind of aspects which does that. So let's talk about robustness. Robustness is in industry and machine learning is pretty much driven by domain adaptation. That means we are still living in an age where we take a data and we think this data represents the real world. We throw it in a machine learning algorithm, whatever representation you want to learn, right? And then you deploy it and say like, I hope the real world doesn't change. Right? And so the new application arises, or these systems are embedded in different domains. Suddenly it's dark, it's white, it's winter, it's spring, it's different camera perspective in factories, stuff like that. Suddenly these systems are still doing a high accuracy in terms of what they output, but actually they're not robust anymore, right? And for that you need not only a measure of of probability, but also on robustness. And this is what we do, right? I don't know how close you are on neural networks. What ends up the most guys doing is at the very end layer of neural networks, you add the softmax layer to classifier, right? It's a distribution of probabilities there. And this is nice, but they also have the disadvantage. They will always give you some high confidences on certain aspects, even though they're entirely in a different domain. Right?
It's because it's like, how do you say, the algorithm is just fulfilling your basic needs, like there's this term for that, the algorithm is optimizing for what you asked for, not what you really need for.
Exactly.
Like
if you train the system
overfitting, was it?
Yes, somehow overfitting. But it's if you trained on cats and dogs, you will always try to identify cats and dogs, whether it's elephant and mussels, right? It doesn't matter, right? It's trying to predict that, and that means we need to identify, and we do that by, it's called temperature scaling, right?
What is it called?
Temperature scaling. Temperature scaling.
Temperature scaling.
You want to have you want to have two feedbacks back. One is the probability distribution, and the other one is the likelihood that the domain is still existing where you are living in, right? And this is one aspect where you can, making things more robust in your application. And we extend that by means of, you can test systems by uploading data to our system, to the system, what we deploy, and it adapts the weights towards the new domain. So you don't need to retrain it because you just have different lighting conditions or different aspects, but it adjusts towards the more robust solution. So you want to have an indication, am I still in the domain? Domain adaptation is key here. And the second one is having it somehow adaptable and fast deployable.
And technical, do you have a dashboard for this everyone can use, or everyone has to build it on its own, or do we have to look in the code for this? Like visual, how can a visual get this very quick measurement to know, okay, this system seems to be robust and seems to be trustworthy?
So you get a score back, right?
A score.
A score, right?
But is
so
it like
similar as your probability.
Did you build like
80%,
a robustness scorecard for it?
Somehow, right? It's not a product that is sold outside, but it's this is we contribute also to scientific community, right? In first place, check out the papers, and second one is we apply to to internal from robotic handling, from pieces handling, and currently discussing this mobility on suspect. Second one is graphical models, such as Bayesian networks, which, it gives us a bit of entering towards, graphs and Bayesian rules, which are a bit more explainable and gives us uncertainty. And uncertainty is something really important because, that systems say, I don't know, right, is not by default designed in the supervision, right, classification scenario. It's very important to cope with certainty and uncertainty of prediction, right? And counter analysis question, right? These kinds of aspects. And the third is graphs. We do that for a graphical representation. Graphical representation and graph, also deep learning applied to graphs, knowledge graphs, like entities, relations connected to each other. And these provide also very nice explainable formats what's happening, right? We did that for healthcare drug repurposing, right? Can we use certain drugs with certain paradigms, model it as a graph structure, and then can we use certain, can we repurpose drugs in certain aspects? And fourth is we combine both learnings. So you train and maybe say a black box algorithm, and you train a system that is more explainable, trees rule based, right? But you train these systems on their output and approximate towards your black box algorithm. And so it's not directly opening up the black box and say, show me one of the 100 million neurons, but it's rather what kind of bias do we have in the current algorithm, to give some kind of.
Okay.
And fifth is observing the entire process, because it is not about a one-time deployment. If you're not observing that if you update, something change, if the application change, something change. So you need to have a consistent view of the entire deployment process and continuously monitoring. Don't stop. Here's my model. Deploy. I'm out. Right. But consistently, deploying end to end.
Okay. So I would like to sum here for a second with a pulse. I had asked, what are the main reasons we are lacking behind in B2B AI integration? Yes, in contrast to end consumers. And number one answer was, well, we have not enough awareness in the company for AI. So this training, education of your team, your management is key. Number two is lacking frameworks and methodology to implement AI. I think so training them and giving them tools at the hand and best practices, having this competence centers. I think this is the second stage. And then it was a mixture of fear of making mistakes and top management does not consider AI critical enough. So you explained really well today two factors. Just to the end, next step would be opening the ecosystem, opening Siemens to build at the end a platform to adapt innovation from the outside and giving it back. And we will have a dedicated talk about this in a couple of weeks with Otto John about how to build an open innovation system. But tell me a little bit, how Siemens and your role doing open innovation in the terms of AI?
Okay, so I said, we should talk about not only the Wertschöpfungstiefe, but also Wertschöpfungsbreite. So not only the depth of value, but also the breadth of value. Okay, now talking about the breadth of value. Breadth of value is a strategy starts, obviously, if you think what we want to do. But a strategy actually also is as of importance is what you don't do. Defining what you don't do is of importance, because then you can leverage the power of the ecosystem. And if you know this is not our core, this is what we don't do and develop ourselves, then you look for partners doing that.
Okay.
And this is, I think, the moment where we on the one side see a continuous changing and intertwined ecosystem of partners. If you know what you don't do, you can leverage speed and scale with the partners outside. Because optimizing towards a process is something done within an organization, but optimizing towards outside, it means you need to have the breadth, and this is what you embrace then as what is called a network effect. You can optimize only to a limited amount, within your own product, but if you launch new products and new value change, and you want to value the transaction value between your partners, which you enable, is only doable outside. And that's why it's of importance to actually identify, what value do we give to our ecosystem partners?
So let's take
the natural reflex is, I sell you a service. right? And I sell you this service, right? So I don't create any value between you and your other customer, right? Because I would potentially even separate you, because it's like I want to sell you once and I sell you the same product, 1,000 times. But this doesn't scale in network effects. This scales on optimizing the product. I can make it cheaper, have a higher quantity, I can optimize my supply chain. But this doesn't scale in network effects. The network effects kicks in if I'm an enabler to connect you with your other customers. And the number of customers and ecosystem partners are much broader than I can sell individual partners. And that means scaling over networks mean giving up value and enabling the ecosystems together by connecting system partners together. And this is, I think, the challenge in Europe and the challenge that we need to embrace. How do we give up value? Mindset again, leadership skills. How do we change that? Because not optimizing, until 100%, but giving away values.
Ulli, you're great. First, you're the first person answering me how I get from strategy to implementation in real case. I mean, a lot of people say we need this, and you gave us really, really good hands-on advice today. I love it, and I will replay this often for everyone out there. So I thank you. And second, I agree, and we will have a different talk about this, how Siemens adds to the value ecosystem, how we can integrate, but we don't have the time. Therefore, the two last questions or statements from you. First, summarize a little bit, because you are into AI for 10 years. Summarize what achieved AI in the last 10 years, where are we standing today? And what is your vision, what AI could be in 10 years? What is the next decade bringing us in terms of AI? I know it's hard.
Yeah. So what brought us, it was a screwed perception of attention economy, which leverages attention and interaction on purely consumer space. Okay. This is what it does us. It went in these kinds of attention space that I think it's close to an unhealthy state. Yesterday was a paper in New York Times. They performed an experiment when people were asked to stay 50 minutes alone with their thoughts, or choose the option to get an electric stimulus, right? To bring an electric shock for themselves, right? 2/3 of men rather have an electric shock accumulated to themselves than being alone with their, So it means these attention mechanisms and this incentive towards, predicting attention and is quite, quite wrong. And the challenges you see, and I hope this is for the next 10 years, we embrace the right challenges. And what are the right challenges? I think we have a great leaderboard and a great blueprint board, which is called the SDGs. And that means, we would need to rethink what is the value system we want to represent, and what kind of these values do we want to tackle and embrace with technology in a responsible and meaningful way. And I hope that this is not only in a consumer space, but also it serves more than one single partner in the world, right? That's a big one.
I fully agree. I collect this from every of my guests now because I like it. Ulli, I know you have the next meeting coming up. I assume it will be a little bit less interactive but productive for your corporation and for your career. And maybe you're the chief AI officer one day at Siemens. I would welcome this.
I don't care about about role. I care about roles and responsibilities, and accountabilities, not necessarily the naming of the things, right? Okay. And by the way, you do an amazing job. I think AI narratives for Europe, right? Knowing about the strengths, knowing about the weaknesses, but identifying opportunities, and for also motivating startup ecosystem and the ecosystem's partners needs leaders. And needs, thought leaders with say what, I'll bring that together, and hey, this is what you act on an excellent way doing. My kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very kind words. That's why we have this show together. You brought us a lot of knowledge. Oli, thank you for this. Everyone stay, please. I do the rest of the moderation for a second, but goodbye to Oli. You can add him on LinkedIn. He has his own private webpage, so he's very public about how to reach him. It's worth having a chat with him. I wish you a good day.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, for joining in. Much appreciated.
So for everyone else left here, announcement in 2 weeks. We have the next Rise of AI virtual chat. So 1 week break in 2 weeks with Professor Christian Gutmann, and we will speak about the AI roadmap for your business. So on purpose, we will go deeper what Ulli and I touched today. I think that was really, really nice. And we will scale this now for companies out of Siemens, a little bit more neutral, and let's see how everyone else can do this. Also would like to announce that we have the summit out there. It's 17th, 18th of November. Siemens will be partner. This is not official, but Uli put in a good word, and I thank him for this. Siemens will be a partner too. I think this is important because Siemens shows itself in the ecosystem. That's why we do events. That's why we cooperate with other companies there too. It's hybrid, so 10 people of you can be there in person because, we only have 10 people left. Everyone else can join virtual, and it's free. We decided to do everything for free. Content, streaming, networking. It's free because we want to open the ecosystem. We want that everyone can learn, understand, and adapt artificial intelligence. So go online, go on Rise of AI, get your ticket if you haven't done it yet. Join us, and else I wish you a great rest of the week. Goodbye.